IP is a means to an end, it's not an end in itself. So meaning that having intellectual property rights does not solve or make up for what we call the business fundamentals. You still have to do the right things by your business. All the IP won't fix that. But it's considered to be one of the more desirable assets to acquire for your business as you go forward. Even as you start, in time you will see, you'll appreciate how it grows and what it could be worth to you in the long run. So I'm going to share a presentation with you. It's an introduction to IP. It's an introduction to the rabbit hole, we would say, because it's a very broad and deep area, and it's essentially a rabbit hole. So we won't be able to do everything with you today, but we will at least show you the fundamentals. Can you see this?
Yes, we can. And just a gentle reminder again, for those who have questions, don't hold on to your question and forget it, right? As soon as a question comes into your mind, type it in the chat. Yeah. And once there is sufficient time after the presentation, we will once again put Mr. Aching on the hot seat to answer your questions. Okay.
Y'all can at the same time score Kerwin and see how much he got right. Okay, so this is just what we're going to cover today. The introduction to the rabbit hole. Okay. So just start with some, well, what is it? Well, we use some pretty fundamental and I'll explain these words. So we talk about express creations of the mind, or express creations of the human intellect. And we have an emphasis on the word expressed because we get asked this all the time. Can I get protection for my ideas, for my concepts? And the short answer is no. You can get protection for things that have come out of your head. So they've been expressed. So they've been written, they've been sung, they've been performed, they've been built, drawn, photographed, etc., sculpted. The things that you actually create are the things that you can actually gain protection for. And so this ties in with the whole notion of protection for what we call a knowledge that is explicit. That is you put out into the public domain. Once you make knowledge available to the public, it is possible for the public now to copy what you put out there and have just as much information as you put out there. And that is where you want some control over. You may want some control over the explicit knowledge that you put out into the public domain. In contrast, there's some forms of knowledge that we call intrinsic knowledge or implicit knowledge. That is know-how, stuff that's in your head that you and you alone know how to do. And that will comprise mainly trade secrets and know-how. We'll explain some of that later. Okay, so we just want to emphasize that definition there. What we're talking about is the stuff that you have created. Okay. A little background on us. We grant rights. We examine applications, and then we may or may not grant, or we may grant with conditions. That's the short story. We get involved in, when we say opposition here, it's nothing to do with the opposition in Parliament, but oppositions to trademark registrations. So you can oppose some of these registrations when we publish them. Okay, so then what we're doing today, making information available to the public. We advise the state, we deal with patent information, promote inventiveness, and we participate in the development of IP at the international arena. So just to let you know, the IP platform or the legislative platform we have in Trinidad and Tobago is not a standalone platform. It is very much consistent with what the World Trade Organization has dictated in its trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. So this is very much a trade issue. It's a business issue. So we hive close to the standards set by the World Trade Organization, And the World Intellectual Property Organization also sets standards for treaties and durations and time limits and what the depth of your rights or the scope of your rights, right? So these are very much in sync with what the world agrees to. So what we're talking about is really two main branches here. Many of us are familiar with the big branch of copyright and related rights, and we may be less familiar with that term industrial property, which is another big branch. You might be unfamiliar with the term, but I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the things that it protects, because we buy and sell and we make choices based on these things every day. We just probably didn't know the fancy titles. So copyright and related rights, that refers to original literary and artistic works, okay? And the only criterion is originality. It has nothing to do with quality, whether it's good or ain't good, whether you like it, whether you don't like it. It's once it's original, what hasn't been done before, and it's the sole work of the author or the composer. So as you can see there, I just put up a bunch of stuff, paintings and movies and books and characters and games, because if I can pull from the actual law here, be a bit more explicit and give you a list. So you're talking about musical works, drama, stage productions, sculpture, computer programs, that is software, photographs, public performances, or any of these things, maps and plans, sound recordings, paintings, AV works, writings, and works of mass in the middle there, which is a collective in that case. We want to also recognize too that these are not absolute rights. For every form of intellectual property you can find, there are what we call exceptions and limitations. So there's a counterbalance to any of these things, the rights that you think you have, if you create any of these things. So in short, there are a list of things that you cannot exert ownership over. As I mentioned before, ideas, and that goes without saying, the stuff that's still stuck in your head. It's of no use to anybody else except you. We can't see it until you make it, until you write it, until you perform it. When we say procedures, we mean how to do something, which is common to everybody. You can't own how to open a car door. Discoveries are things that you found, meaning that you did not exert any intellectual effort to create. You found it. You didn't make it. So there has to be some exertion of intellectual effort to create, to be considered a intellectual creation. Okay. When we say mere data, we mean raw data that is not organized, meaning it's not yet in the form of a database, which is organized data, which you can have ownership over. If you create a database, you can own a database, but you can't own raw data. Most states have waived their rights in their legislative texts in order to make the law free for all and sundry without restriction. Official translations, political speeches, and so on, legal proceedings. So that's the short list of exceptions, but everything else is fair game. If you recall, the long title is Copyright and Related Rights. And when we say related rights, we mean, well, what happens after somebody creates or composes something? Well, you might have an actual performer, because you might appreciate, this playlist might need some updating, but I like them anyway. You appreciate that many of these artists here did not compose all of the songs that they perform. They may have composed some of them, but not all. So in those cases, they still have performance rights. So I could perform something that somebody else wrote, but there's value in somebody else's performance. So I could go on and perform. You won't pay to see me do that. You'll pay to see Beyonce do that, because there's a difference in our respective performances. Okay, so there's the rights, and we have signed some new treaties that gives the especially movie performers some additional rights in the public performances of their works that they've done a long time ago. Broadcasters, these are the guys who transmit stuff from a venue, just so that you know that for any given game out there, Olympics, FIFA, IPL, CPL, anything like that, UEFA, you name it. The owners of these things, these events, they own the event, and then they license it to broadcasters to then transmit to your home, and then they pummel you with advertising to pay back for what they paid. That is how they make their money. So they prepay in advance for the broadcast rights. And I have to tell you, the broadcast rights are worth plenty more than the gate receipts. When you see a stadium full of people, that is gravy, right? The real money is in the television broadcasting rights that sent that thing to many other televisions around the world. The viewership, the actual viewership is far greater than the persons at the stadium at the time. Sound recordings, those are the guys who work the magic behind the studio or behind the artist. Very often you'll see a record or an album produced by, and you'll see the name of the band, and then you'll see a producer. This is a guy who actually polishes the music and adds auto-tune and fancy stuff to make you sound better than you really are. All them kind of things. So that would be a producer. Okay. Under our law, those things that we spoke about would be considered economic rights, the money things. Under our law and a few others, but not in everybody else's own, you have some features called moral rights. Nothing to do with morality, but it's simply that, just as it says there, the right to be identified, so that you know it's me, I created that. I am the author, I am the composer. The author or the composer has the right to object to distortions of his work or misuse or misrepresentations. I'll give you an example. This happens probably every political season. A party decides we want to blast that song from our truck when we're doing our neighborhood drive-throughs. And it has happened in the past where you might have recalled some musicians, some artists have objected to the use, and they say, that party, I don't want to be associated with Olia. Do not play my song from Olia truck. That is a right to object to distortion of your work. If you have a particular set of values, you may object to them advertising agency using your song in an advertisement that promotes alcohol or pork sausages, for example. And that has happened. That is actually a real example that happened. Somebody actually took a guy's song and put it in a pork ad, and he wrote them straight away and said, "Take it down. I don't want my song in that." Those are the kind of rights the author has, or the creator has. Okay, right to avoid distortions, and you retain these works. Even if you sell the work, you are still the creator. You can assign the rights in your work, but you still have your right to object to how it gets used. That's an important consideration. Now, before I get into this big branch called industrial property and all these things I'm going to get into here, a big distinction between copyright and related rights and these listed here is that copyright and related rights are what we call automatic rights. So they arise automatically as soon as you finish. So as soon as you put down your pen and you finish writing, your rights have arisen automatically without you having to pay any fees or fill out any forms. How is that happen? Well, that's because we are signatory to something called the Berne Convention, and every other country in the world, which is most of them, have also signed the Berne Convention, meaning that countries which you never set foot on in your life, you have rights there right now. You've created something here, they will recognize your rights across there, even though you never fill out any forms or paid any fees or showed up or spoke to anybody across there. Once you can assert a situation where you discover that somebody over there is using my stuff without my permission, you can assert your rights in that.
Mr. China, could you spell that for me? Is it burn,
Oh,
bird?
sorry. It's named after the Swiss town. That's what it's or if you want to be French, Bern, Berne.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so that is critical for that, how that operates. So in contrast, so copyright is automatic. You don't have to register. The corollary is these you're seeing here, patents and trademarks and industrial designs down to integrated circuits. These are not automatic. These are sovereign rights or territorial rights, meaning that in order to get them, you have to make an application in each country you wish to have them enforced in. You have to have them granted in each country you want to enforce them in. Which means just to get patent or trademark rights right next door in Grenada or St. Vincent, if you think you have a fantastic business venture, you're gonna market volcanic dust and sell it as something, and you're gonna set up a business and you have a brand name for it, but you have to go and register the brand name in St. Vincent and talk to my good friend Miss Caesar, right? So they're territorial. So I'm just we're gonna get into each of them, or at least introduce it to them. So patents is the area I deal with most of the time. What we call exclusive rights for technical solutions. Something solving a technical problem. The illustrations I have up there are for some familiar stuff and some unfamiliar stuff. So good old Gatorade. The Gatorade recipes are protected by about 5 different patents, or they were, because they've expired, which is why you start seeing other aids on the market now, like Powerade, etc., because the Gatorade patents have expired. That's good to know. The Right Flyer, that was covered by a patent, that has long since expired. Plaquenil happens to be a brand name for the infamous hydroxychloroquine. So there's a patent, or there are patents on that drug. So it could be from simple stuff as recipes for Gatorade to complicated stuff like pharmaceuticals, right? So it doesn't matter. Once it's a technical solution, it's a scientific or technical process or problem. Now the criteria are essentially the invention must be brand new in the whole wide world. That it has to be novel. The invention has to have what we call inventive step, or be non-obvious to persons who know something about that area of science. And it has to have some industrial applicability. So the technologies can advance and evolve over time and be patented at every step of the way. So I did some research a while ago on the evolution of toilet paper. So I found the first reference in China. Okay, so we gather that maybe before that time we were leaves with or something else. And then in 1857, Joseph Gaiety is credited with invented modern commercially available toilet paper, which was in discrete sheets, like napkins. And then Mr. Wheeler is the person who invented what we are still using today, perforated sheets on a roll. So he got a patent for that back in 1891. Of course, that's long since expired. And the improvements of that have been numerous. Just to fast forward to what is the latest thing today in this area of technology? Well, paperless toilets now. These are very popular in Japan. So if you get to travel to Japan, beware. There's a 60% chance you will encounter one of these, and all the instructions will be in Japanese. So brace yourself. But it works this way: once you've finished your business, you press the rinse cycle, and a wand extends on it, and it has some of them have a locator, so it knows where to aim. and you get rinsed with warm water, hopefully, and then you press for the dry cycle, and warm air will dry you off. Ta-da! Now, what it means though is, from some of your reactions, is that just because I have an invention and a patent doesn't mean that everybody gonna want it. you have to also deal with social norms and people's expectations and taboos regarding some processes. So just be aware that your invention has to be brand new in the whole wide world, not done before. And this is why I'm emphasizing that, because this is where most new inventions fall down. They're not brand new. It's been done somewhere in the world in some obscure book, or most in 9 times out of 10, the inventor has not even done enough research, has not even used Google. I can't tell you how many times we found some inventions on sale on Amazon already for $19.99. So somebody didn't do their homework or their research when they started. So it's important to do that so you don't waste your time and money. Okay. Like copyright, patents also have a list of exceptions and limitations. So they're kind of similar. So you can't get protection over discoveries, but also scientific theories, laws of physics, for example, or mathematical methods, how to do Pythagoras theorem and quadratic equations, if you recall those things from school. Literary and dramatic musical works, essentially, if you recall, those are covered under what? Copyright. So things that are covered by copyright, you can't get protected as patents, which means software in this country is not patentable. However, in some countries, software may be protectable, or if the software is attached to hardware. So schemes, rules, methods of performing mental acts, or doing business, or business method patents are not possible here under our law. The diagnosis for the treatment of people, or methods, we talk about methods, not the actual drugs or the medical instruments, but the actual treatment process is not patentable. Presentative information, things that are contrary to public order, morality, or prejudicial to animal, human life, or the environment. So that's the short list of things that are excluded from patentability. But everything else, it's technology neutral. Sometimes accompanying patents are the aesthetics to the thing that you're creating. So most of us have devices like these, or use things like these, where the patents will cover the internal gubbins, how it works. But the reason why you bought it may be because sometimes you're attracted by how it looks, and then you come in closer to see how it works. So industrial design is a very important part of marketing anything. It's got to be aesthetically appealing, and that's what industrial designs protect, the ornamental aspects. And sometimes if you're clever, you can carve out a whole market for yourself, as SM Jalil did with their chubby bottle. So because they own that shape, they essentially had the lunch kit market all to themselves for decades, and nobody could come close to them. If you recall, there's nothing in that shape on the market because they own that shape. Okay, so that's important. If you get to be first to market, you can carve out a big space for yourself. You're not allowed to protect technical features with industrial designs. However, a technical feature may be baked in to your design. So if you think about ergonomic chairs or ergonomic tools, the functionality is baked into the shape, right? How things work, your chairs, that saucepan has fins in it for presumably ornamental purposes, but those fins have a technical purpose in spreading heat up the sides of the saucepan. The perfume industry is a heavy user of this area. I dare you to find any 2 different brands of perfume in the same shape of bottle. They're all unique and different. You can get industrial designs for clothing, as that's an ornamental hijab invented by a local inventor, a local creator. And those funny looking things in the bottom right are watering cans. If you have a swanky garden, you have to have a swanky watering can, right? What we're saying is that people have figured out how to apply a design aesthetic to what we might consider everyday objects. okay, and create an extra degree of panache, and you can charge more. Integrated circuits would cover the electronics and things. So we're familiar with computer chips and circuit boards. And now we have wearable electronics. We have Google glasses. We have miniaturized hearing aids that fit invisibly into our ears. We have sensors in our fancy shoes to measure or stride. Athletes use them in some of their tracksuits, so they can tell. They have strain meters in them, so they can tell which way they're twisting or not twisting, as the case may be. Every aspect of your life now has electronics in it, and these things are all being facilitated by the miniaturization of electrical components, which many of these inventors own as integrated circuits. Okay. For plant breeders, there's something called plant breeders' rights or new plant varieties. Of course, the plant doesn't own any rights. It's the breeder, the person who took the time to cross existing varieties to come up with something that wasn't there before. So it's not some bush that you just found. It's something that you have been developing or selecting for particular characteristics. And we're probably familiar with the hot pepper wars. And that started as an arms race. You start crossing two hot peppers, you get a super hot, then you cross the super hots, you get a mega hot, and you keep going until it gets ridiculously hot, almost inedible. Most of us could tolerate maybe up to Scotch bonnet in our regular everyday food. If you consider yourself a pepper mouth, that's 350,000 Scoville units. Just understand that Trinidad Scorpion and the Carolina Reaper is like 1.3, 1.5 million. That's a pain category. But there's a market for it because there's always that class of mad people who said, I will eat that. You've probably seen the challenges on YouTube. Most entertaining. Our local breeders have also been very good with anthurium breeding to get all these different colors into one plant. Our cocoa breeding program in Trinidad and Tobago is world famous, and it's based on 7 decades of selective breeding to get the Trinidad Select hybrids, which are world famous for size, flavor, and disease resistance. And of course, the pretty colors. It had to be a Trinidadian carnival cocoa. The square watermelon is not a variety. That's just a trick. What they do is they allow ordinary watermelons to develop in a square form, and the round melon just adapts to the shape of the box. And for them, it suits them for shipping purposes. You can now fit watermelons in a box or crate, and if you buy them, they won't roll around in your trunk, right? This is interesting here, geographical indications. Now, this is where we say these marks are used to identify goods that have derived their qualities from a specific geographical region. This is an area that's gaining much interest in the Caribbean region and Trinidad. Where we say that the reason why it tastes so great is because of that geographical region. And so our Montserrat Cocoa Farmers Cooperative have obtained the rights for Montserrat Hills cocoa. So I don't know if you're a local chocolatist, or I am a local chocolate eater, and you can actually tell the difference between chocolates grown in Montserrat Hills, chocolates from Tobago, chocolates from Rancho Quemado in South, chocolates from Santa Cruz, and so on and so on. I mean, if you eat enough chocolate, you can tell the difference. There's a tasteable difference. And the people who are into whiskeys can tell you the difference between Scotch whiskey, which comes from Scotland, and Tennessee whiskey, which comes from Tennessee. And if you're a serious tea drinker, you might know the differences between your Darjeeling teas and ordinary Lipton teas and Earl Grey and other Ceylon teas, and people who are into cheeses know there are thousands of different types of cheeses, Parmesans and Roqueforts, habanero, you name it. They're all over the place, and because they differ based on what type of animal milk was used and what kind of grass or where was the animal grazing and where was it cured and what conditions was it cured under. Some cheeses have to cure with in the presence of certain fungus to get your blue cheeses. That's a fungus. There's a pretty yucky cheese that I forgot the name now. I think it's illegal for export, but they have to allow flies to lay eggs in it for the maggots to process it, so it becomes a soft cheese. It's very expensive. Don't knock it until you taste it. There's a market for everything. There are even cheeses made from human milk. Yes, so the cheese is based on human breast milk. There's a market for everything, pal. If you know your wines, you know that you can have sparkling white wine from many countries, but you can only call it champagne if it comes from the Champagne region in France. If it's not, it's just sparkling white wine. Okay, so there's a value added attached to the region where it's grown. Now, many of these things entail you having to make a revelation to somebody or to an office. There are some people who decide we are not going to apply, we are going to take our chances and keep our recipes secret. And you probably know all of these or some of these. All of these have a reputation. And they took a gamble. Coca-Cola took a gamble. They kept their recipe secrets. KFC, their 11 herbs and spices, all famous Angostura bitters. And Casey Confectionery has a trade secret on their mango chili sweets. Listerine used to be a secret recipe. But what it means is, though, even though you don't have rights per se, but you now have to take extra steps to manage access to that information. Who gets to see the recipe? Who gets to blend? You appreciate that Caribbean bottlers down here, they don't get to blend Coca-Cola's recipe, they get concentrate with instructions. For each liter, add so many liters of water, so many kilograms of sugar, and so many psi of CO2, and that's a batch. Follow that. KFC would have similar instructions. Dilute this with flour and bread the chicken. They will not let your franchisee access. Likewise, the little guys who have griller carts on the sidewalk, the ones with secret sources, they tell me they have the same dilemma. If they don't go to work, or if the master chef doesn't go to work, no secret sauce today. So you have to guard what is the core part of your business. If you give your itinerant workers, you might have hired some Venice fellas and some minimum wage fellas. If you give away a secret to them, you run the risk of losing the whole razor debt for your business. So just understand that you have to manage things differently when you have a secret recipe. Take some steps. The trademarks are brands and signs and symbols by which we identify goods and services. Very often, this is how we encounter products and services. Before our first encounter, sometimes I just heard about so and so, or I saw a logo, and then you zoom in closer for investigation. So very often your branding might be the first time somebody encounters your business. So it's very important to take some steps, as some of these companies have done over the years, to refine their branding and their messaging. What's in that brand? What is conveyed? What sort of reputation you want to hang on it? And something you have to think beyond yourself, because many entrepreneurs name the business after themselves, or they name the product exactly what it is, which is not allowed in trademarks. I'll tell you why. Your brand must be capable of distinguishing your product or your service but it cannot be generic. It cannot be descriptive. It cannot be what it is. Okay. It cannot be your new detergent is called detergent or good detergent. Or actually, we've seen some attempts. Huh? There's a nice Chinese restaurant I know in Sarawak called Good Eating Place. The food is greater, but I actually had to talk to the owner. What? Why just Good Eating Place? And he admitted the names he really wanted were taken already, so he was in a bind, so he just put that. Anyway, it's played out. But if you have the chance to think through and test brands, test them, try them out, you want to make sure that you can distinguish yourself from a sea of competition, as you can see here. I mean, how do you make sure I zoom in on you in a nest of competition, competing for people's eyesight and their business in particular, right? And you might ask, so what's so important about that? Because why I'm saying that, because we meet a lot of entrepreneurs who do this as an afterthought. They've built the whole model and everything is ready to launch, and then somebody asks, what are we gonna call it? Oh, and they slap a name on it. All of these brands have some stories behind them. Just to let you know, we updated our trademarks law effective last year. And we are now allowed to file not just word marks for brands, but we can also file sound marks. You see there the Metro Goldwyn Mayer. Everybody knows when you see one of those movies come out, what's the first thing you hear? That you hear the roar. If an Intel ad comes up, you hear ding ding ding. And likewise for what T-Mobile and a few other brands now have distinctive sounds or a short, not just like a bar words of tones that accompany the branding, so that it hits you at different levels. That is deliberate. That's nailing the message inside your head. I would strongly advise that you do some research. It may not be in your plans right now, but at some point in time, you might be considering, you might have some export ambitions, or you might be trading services or goods and services online. That means you might have access to other markets. It means too that you need to consider, what does my brand translate to in a different language and a different slang, and what does my color scheme mean potentially in another culture? So I like to use this famous example here, Tata. Tata is a big car company in India. They are very well. They do very well. They own Jaguar. They own Range Rover. They're not a small company, but when they try to market their Tata branded trucks in Trinidad and Tobago, did not fly at all. When we saw it land, we said, "Oh no! Why you didn't warn these fellas? That can't work here." And to be fair, if they were doing their homework, they would not have found that word in the English dictionary. It needed a native Trini speaker to tell them the slang is important. That word is not a good brand. And so said, so done. It didn't last a year in the market. You can't even find any old trucks now. Not a good idea for Trinidad and Tobago.
So, Mr. Aching, so can we say that idea was Tata?
Yes, that was a Tata idea. Mitsubishi made a similar mistake, So in Trinidad and Tobago and in English-speaking markets, you can drive your Pajero in ignorance. You don't know what you're driving. Why I say that? They cannot sell a Pajero in a Spanish-speaking country. In a Spanish-speaking country, they sell it as a Montero. If you want to know, if you have any Veni friends, go and ask them what that means. Check it for yourself. But it's slang. So there's some brands that don't work in some markets. for good. And there's a long story. There's several examples we have on that. Okay, so just be aware that you have to do some research before you just settle on a brand. Think overseas, think exports, that kind of thing. This is just this is a person's who interested. I'm gonna share Kerwin, I'm gonna send a PDF of this so you can share it with your participants, okay? And they can check out
that would be appreciated, because now I am upset. I even just put this for an hour. I think I have a million questions. I might need a personal session just for myself.
We can arrange that, man. Not a problem. Okay, let me just finish this. But it's a platform for green technology exchange. That's all I see on it. That's a whole long area to deal with. But these are business considerations. These are not going to solve your company problems, but they are important towards your business. And understand they have durations, so it's different. So for copyright and related rights, anything like that, those rights last as long as the author is alive and up to 50 years after his death, which means you can put these things in your will for your estate, for your kids, grandkids to exploit. Right? So Kitchener's family is still exploiting his legacy. Likewise, Bob Marley's estate is still exploiting the royalties, and it's a pretty good royalty stream for Bob Marley's collection, I have to tell you that. Trademarks essentially last 10 years, but you can renew them indefinitely. So the oldest brand we have on our books is Angostura Bitters, which is about 170 something years old this year, something like that. I must really go and get the exact date. Patents last 20 years, and then it's public domain. Likewise, industrial designs, it's 5 years, but renewable twice, so maximum 15 years. Plants could be either 15 or 18, depending on what kind of plant, if it's a vine or a shrub. Geographical indications are indefinite, as long as the item retains its distinctiveness. Okay, and I think integrated circuits, which is not on this list, lasts 10 years. All right, so I just want to thank you for your attention. Like I said, sorry if we didn't have a lot of time. But like I said, it's a rabbit hole. It's impossible to get through everything in an hour, but at least the whole purpose of us doing this is to put you on a better footing, so you look out for yourself, and so you don't get exploited. One,
yeah,
and so that you also take a closer look at what do I have that might be worth more than what I thought it was worth. So
yeah,
we're open to any questions.
This is great. I do have a couple questions. Even the last comment, the last thing that you said, it reminded me of Moruga Hill rice.
Yes.
So I think a big part of it is the iron content in the soil. So if the soil were to lose the iron content, then it would no longer have the that identity that it's associated with.
Right. Well, which is why for persons who do that for agriculture things, they have to now manage the soil. How do I make sure I don't lose the unique features of my soil? In Montserrat Hills, there's actually the soil series actually has a name. It's called Cocoa Soils. They've actually named these soils. And I used to be another life. I used to be in soil science, and we used to have to do soil taxonomy. You didn't think that there's a name for soils. You think everything's just dirt.
Right.
But we classified soils, and those are specific soils that these guys exploit, and they manage these soils to make sure they don't become barren. In short, yes. And so the Moruga Hill rice people have also in the process of getting a GI, and one of the things they did point out to me is the red clay.
Yeah.
And I mean, what gives the red clay its color is iron, and that's one of the best parts about the hill rice. If most of you people know what hill rice and red rice, and how nutritious it is. But
yeah. Well, I hope they hear this now and do their research. But Mr. Aching, here is what, because we will stick to time today.
okay,
So what I will do, I would answer, well, I would put forward about 2 of the questions, but I want to put you on the spot and in front of all our guests. I want to know if we can have another session with you where we probably focus a little more on the agriculture side, because folks, Mr. Aching is a very, very interesting individual, and he has some experience in agriculture and so forth that I would prefer he share himself. And I know, especially in light of the pandemic and our now like fully recognizing the need for things like food security, right? There are some things I want to go into, but seeing as we just have 7 minutes, I don't even want to touch on that topic right now. So, Mr. Aching,
yeah.
I would love if we could do a follow-up session or
Have you
2.
got answer? The short answer for just scanning through many of the questions here. If you have something that the solution is new, and that is the thing. So in the area of hydroponics and aquaponics, most of the systems we see are put together are done to that. But unless you come up with and I've seen these things are protectable. If next time I could work with patterns to show you what is protectable in aquaponics and hydroponics, and very often is the shape of the hardware. So instead of, if you've been using off the shelf stuff from the plumber, from the hardware, you didn't design any of those pieces. So the chances are it might not be something new that you come up with, because people can arrange pipes. But if you mold your own, you can have industrial designs in what you molded, and sometimes how you arrange your filters, etc. So those are protectable. Difference between copyright and patent. Copyright, these are literary artistic stuff. Patents for technical things like your phone and all this stuff inside your car. There are probably 2,000 patents inside your car right now that you weren't aware of. Okay. The protection is on what is created. So regardless of whether you created with a hammer or a 3D printer, if what you create is new, then you have a potential of owning it. Trinitario cocoa itself is the original varieties are not protected simply because they're in the public domain too long. However, the Ministry of Agriculture has filed for the rights for 11 new varieties, and they will be filing for rights for the newer varieties. So the emphasis is on new.
Before you continue, Mr. Aching, that response is in relation to the question:
do we own the IP rights in our Trinitario cocoa?
Right. Okay. That's a very good. That's a very good question, because I had asked a similar question with respect to how can we benefit from these things economically as a nation.
Oh yes.
I think those two questions.
If you know the economics of cocoa, the global cocoa market, our local farmers who have been selling essentially almost exclusively Trinitario cocoa, the price they get is like 2.5 times to 3 times higher than the bulk cocoa, the Forastero cocoa you get from Africa.
Yeah.
There's a price differential because ours is what we call fine flavor cocoa, and all our cocoa has been graded as fine flavor cocoa, which carries a different price market. When you go for the geographical indication, you have the option to go to a higher value added now, and the multiplier goes up to 5 to 10 to 12 times the bulk cocoa. So that's why I do it. It's for money's sake.
Right.
Why you make the distinction. Okay. In fact, for all the things, hill rice, tableland pineapples, I think paramount season people were looking at it. You name it. When you do these things, you're trying to distinguish yourself from the ordinary stuff.
Yeah.
To justify your higher pricing because you are unique or more unique than the rest of them.
Right.
Yep. Regarding secret sauce and secrets, you have to find a way to not let it leak. You have to keep your mouth shut. One, you have to control your staffing. You can't let your staff be privy to your blending secrets. And the thing with secrets, with secret sauces, you can't have a secret sauce with 3 ingredients in it, because it's either this one first or that one first or that one.
Right.
That's easy to figure out. It works better with complicated recipes with multiple ingredients and multiple process steps. Anybody who does baking knows the difference between adding wet ingredients to dry or dry ingredients to wet is the difference between cake and biscuits, right? If you're a bakist. So just as you know that there's a difference in how you do things. That's a good question. Can you give ownership of your corporate or business entity? No. Strictly speaking, the rights only last as long, not so much as the business is alive. It is the composer. It's the life of the author. So even though you've sold it, for example, I think James Brown and David Bowie have sold their rights while they were alive to companies, and they're now being traded as commoditized bonds. So there's something called Bowie bonds. So even though they're both dead, the collection of music is earning royalties like crazy, because we're still in because if they took out the rights in the US, they have 75 years after death, which is a good long time, huh?
Wow.
And so that means whoever owns the rights is still pulling in money. Like whoever owns the company that owns the Beatles collection, simply because Paul McCartney is still alive, those rights are still gunning. He's still here. So until the last Beatle goes is when the clock starts ticking. Michael Jackson only passed away, you could say, the other day. So he still has 65 years to go again. You understand that these are significant rights that you can leverage going forward. I mean, people like Bob Marley and these are the artists who died a long time ago. The only thing you can say safely out of copyright is classical music, because it's hundreds of years old.
Right.
But for contemporary music, music done in the 50s, because the artists died only in the 70s, those rights still have a couple decades to go again. That's significant. That's significant time to extract value, and that's the thing when you do these things. So yes, I'll be pleased to come back and address your agriculture things. A disclosure: I studied agriculture a long time ago. I was
starting, man. I wanted to give them the big reveal in the next session.
Sorry.
So yes, folks, you see, he has a very, very unique background, and I think in the next session I'll probably share a little bit on the story of how we met, our first meeting. And well, for those of you who would have been on some of our webinars for 2020, our Revolution in Agriculture series, and those of you who would have been also part of our mastermind, I hope you are appreciating the value of what was brought forth in this session, especially with regards to building your business, right? I mean, that point you said about the secret sauce, when I typed the question, I wasn't just looking at an actual source, but what are the things that makes your business tick? What are the things that really separate you from everybody else, right? What we spoke about, with respect to food, for those of you who were in our sessions like cheese making, sausage production, and so forth, we touched on some of these very things that Mr. Atching brought out. So I want you all to see that even the more developed countries are recognizing the need to start protecting what they have already created. right? Trinidad and Tobago, we are starting to get there, but it is also very good news because now we have more information to go and start creating new things, right? So, folks, it is 2 minutes past 3, Mr. Aching. This session, it went like a flash,
Sorry,
right?
man.
It was so much good information. Thank you for just touching on some of the questions we had. Definitely, we would have a follow-up session. I think we can safely say moving forward, we will try to have a webinar every week. So what I will do, I will confirm with Mr. Aching when will be good for him with his very, very hectic calendar.
Yep.
All right, and we will confirm with the crew. So before we leave, I don't know if anyone would like to just unmute and say a couple words to Mr. Aching on behalf of the Homegrown family, on behalf of the Bringing Agriculture Home family. And you all know I like to call names too if will it take too long.
Hi, Majid here.
Yes.
Hey Majid.
If you're hearing a lot of noise in the background, I'm still on the plant, so I was moving around on the plant listening. I got most of it. It really opened up my mind in terms of ideas, in terms of, and Cohen, you would have an idea what it is we're looking to do. But it created a new twist where it is we could look at options to now brand certain products differently so that we'll be able to take it at a different level. So that it was very, very interesting and inspiring, I must say, because of some of the examples he gave and how he was able to deliver it. Really created that new, open up my mind for some ideas that we could discuss. So I'm hoping, other than the future presentations, which I'm looking forward to, maybe some personal communication in terms of meetings between us would be nice also, to share some ideas in that we'll be able to give examples and maybe look at it if it's possible or not. And then we could present it to everybody so they'll have an idea also to be able to support it or not.
Definitely, Majid. I mean, right now, well, you all know me, so my mind is racing, and I think I would definitely love to have a strategy meeting, for our mastermind crew and Mr. Aching, because, we have ideas, we have things that we would like to do, but understanding how the process flows, what makes sense, right? How to position yourselves. Mr. Aching, you said something there. Even this, a simple thing like naming your business, and you all would have known Homegrown, we talk about this a lot. Your name is Jeff, so you just name your business Jeff Business, and these type of things. And it's not that in itself is wrong, but it is not something we should take lightly. You should put thought into what name you're going to give your business. All right. Anyone else would like to comment? Any of our mastermind participants?
Good afternoon, Cohen. Good afternoon, Mr. Aching.
Mr. Bellamy.
Hey. So actually, just before I heard of this webinar, I had been thinking about certain things that I needed to get either patents or copyright protection for, as the case may be. So I really I for one I'm thankful for how God arranges things. But surely the information presented today was quite beneficial. It was quite substantial, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, most welcome. Like I said, I'll be pleased to focus on any area that you all ask for. So if it is you wish to focus on let's say it's anything to do with agriculture, which is not just plant breeders' rights, it's also branding and designs and patents in some cases, because sometimes we overlook agricultural inventions and we just take them for granted, like, well, somebody built it.
You're right.
And I don't know how many of us have been in a spot where you're trying to get something done and you say, I wish I had a device that would do so and so. Well, that's the impetus. Or you build stuff. And if you're handy, you build it yourself.
Right. All right. So folks, thank you all for taking this time to join us for this presentation. It is always a wonderful experience to connect with you all. Mr. Aching, we hereby officially welcome you to the Homegrown family. This was a wonderful session, and we definitely look forward to future presentations. And we also want to thank the entire Intellectual Property Office for availing yourselves, because I know we are not the only ones that you all facilitate. This is really good. I applaud you all, and I hope that not just, well, we know there are already folks who are familiar, but we have so many entrepreneurs, so many innovators and creators that need this information, right? So we thank you for taking time to do things like this. So everyone, you all have a wonderful day, have a blessed week, have a safe week. Remember, we are still in turbulent times, so let us cooperate, let us work together. However, this is also a season of tremendous opportunity. Remember, our motto is growing what? Healthy minds, food, and businesses. All right, so this is a great time for opportunity, so let us take advantage of it and make the most of it. So thanks again, everyone. I see we have at least a couple of young ladies, a couple of ladies with us on the session. It would have been nice if one of you all could have, you know, said a little hello. The only male voices we would have heard. It's
hello.
Nice.
Yeah. My name is Alicia, and I find this very interesting. I look forward to understand some things more, but I do look forward to it. I did enjoy this session, and
okay,
that's about it.
Fantastic. I just emailed the slides to you, so you should have it in your inbox soon.
Okay, great. So the folks who are registered or who have joined our Bringing Agriculture Home group, Bringing Agriculture Home, you all will have access to the PDFs. All right. So thanks again, everyone. Have a blessed day.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Be safe.
Bye.